There's Murphy Dog. Okay, here's the sitch.
The goal of this project is to make a spatula out of 2 blocks of wood, one for the spatula and one for the handle. But because the handle goes at such an awkward angle, I need to join these 2 blocks together by cutting a notch and gluing the handle block in to form one long piece. Now, in order to do this, I had to cut a notch at a 70-degree angle at just the right width so I can get a nice tight glue up. To do this, I decided to build a mount for the block out of MDF. It would hold the block at just the right angle on the crosscut sled through the table saw. So I measured and drew all the angles on the MDF. And then I cut a couple of pieces. And as you can see here, I double stick taped them to the side of the block at the right angle and adjusted the blade height and then started cutting. This was actually a pretty elegant solution, and after a couple of cuts, was able to get a nice tight fit. But before I glue it all together, I wanted to lay out what the handle would look like, how it would fit into the other block, and then cut it out before I actually glue it together. Of course, I had to clean up the notch, make sure that it was flat and clean on the inside. Then it was over to the bandsaw to cut the rough shape of the handle before glue up. I left a block at the end just for glue up purposes. You'll see in a minute here. Little scrapey scrape with the card scraper. And we're in there. Good fit. Little last filing to make sure it's a clean fit. Little glue. Little tap, tap, tap. And we're good to go. Now that I had one big block to work with, it was back over to the bandsaw to cut out, again, the rough shape of the spatula with the handle in place. With the profile cut, I just had to mark out the actual shape of the spatula, noting where it connects in with the handle. Then back over to the bandsaw. And in case you're wondering, the blue glove is covering a cut on my hand that I didn't want any dust to get into. Now I have to mark out the shape of the inside of the spatula. Now the tricky part of this is I wanted it to be thin all the way up to the back of the spatula and then taper up into the handle. Because it's a tricky kind of shape, I ended up building this sled for the router that let me go in and chew out kind of the middle of the spatula and get the bulk of the material out right up until the transition part. Then I took the Dremel out and grinding burr and card scraper and really refined that shape so that it tapers into the edges. Then it was over to the belt sander for a lot of sanding. This is where the shape really starts to come into play and you start to see what it's actually going to look like as a final piece. After the belt sander, it's over to the other belt sander. This one gives me a different angle to do a lot more shaping. And then it was back over to the vice grip with Dremel, more sanding, then the card scraper. Card scraper is just amazing, and it really lets you kind of flow the lines from one place to the other. Really getting those nice, smooth curves. More sanding. It's going to sound like a broken record for a little bit here because it's just all sanding from here on out. I did get a new Dremel tool, rotary tool, that with some spongy kind of sanding discs that are really good for complex curves and crevices and stuff. This was kind of a game changer. My Craftsman Dremel that I had for 30 years finally gave up the ghost, so I got this new one from Wen. It was only 20 bucks. And then these little sanding pads, and they're going to be really cool.
Okay, so after a ridiculous amount of sanding, and I do mean ridiculous, this is what we end up with. Really nice, actually. Super smooth. Nice curves. Solid. I'll just gotta lube it up.
To seal the wood, I used my own version of walrus oil, which is a commercially available sealant, but it is mineral oil, fractionated coconut oil, whatever that is, a little beeswax, and heat it up, and it really works well. You just kind of slather it on there and let it sit overnight. It soaks in and really seals that wood up nicely.
Here it is. All finished.